Okay, we should be in business. Well, first off, this is the first episode of Dano Says So, which is my attempt at podcasting and running a YouTube channel and learning how the modern world works when you can't go outside and just scream at people. Strategically, I chose to have Kevin Seconds, who most of us know, and if we don't, we will by the end of this, as the first guest. A, because he's part of my starting point in the counterculture, and B, because he's someone whose social conscience I trust and I believe would get a dialogue like this started off on the right note. So, Kevin, thank you for doing this.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I'm honored. I'm glad you're doing it. I actually am surprised it's taken you this long. I think you're perfect for this kind of shit.
Fear of technology.
Yeah, well, that stuff,
Right.
We can get around that.
Okay, so that said, you've got me by a few years, but we both got as much pepper as salt in the beard, right?
I think I have you beat on that one.
Well, you've also got me beat in terms of follow-up counts. But what I would ask is, we both grew up in music that was largely music of protest and it was music of social conscience. But have you ever seen the world like it is now?
No. I mean, I was just talking out. My wife Alice and we talk about this almost daily now, where we just sort of check in and make sure that we're hanging in there mentally, and because this is, I'm 59, so I've seen, just in the world alone, and just in the country alone, I've seen a lot of upheaval, and even when my mom was very sort of politically. She's pretty up on stuff. She was a housewife, but she was also, Berkeley, educated and a liberal, and was kept up on stuff. And as soon as I was old enough to be able to like be sat down and talked at politically, my mom did that, which was always, probably the biggest reason why I am who I am now. But I don't think I've ever seen or felt like this. It's just it's completely crazy.
Well, I sat back and I looked at it about a week ago, and you and I are in the same decade. We're in our 50s. But I was a small kid when Nixon resigned, but I remember it. Okay?
Yeah.
You were old enough to have been a kid who had probably developed a mouth by then, right?
Right.
After that, you get Reagan years, you get Gulf War, you get a lot of crazy things that have happened in our lifetime, and a lot of objectionable American politics.
Yeah.
But nothing like now.
No, I mean, my first being aware of like politics was the Reagan thing, and actually it was I recall. Well, I won't go into that because that's long. But yeah, I think Reagan was like, Nixon was my first where I really felt like, the grand the hugeness of it, like I'd see his image on TV, but I always was just like, let's change the channel, get to something that's better. But my mom and dad were always watching, and I remember my mom trying to explain Watergate to me because the hearings were on constantly when,
right.
And I hated it. It was just like, can't we watch, Three's Company or whatever the fuck was on TV at the time. And no, it was later than that. But yeah, that all seemed heavy. And then the Vietnam War, I remember my parents talking about that, and I knew a little bit about it, but it wasn't really until like Reagan, and that the first time I voted was Reagan. I voted for, my first vote was for Mondale and Mondale and what was her name? I don't know. I still have the sticker
Geraldine
on my.
Ferraro.
Thank you.
Yes.
I still have an old Santa Cruz Duane Peters board, and I had this big sticker of how cool is that, right? Mondale Ferraro. Come on.
Some tells me you're a potential eBay millionaire, but
probably, yeah.
So there's an interesting thing. We get off on the note of Nixon, which, congratulations, Dan and Kevin, you've immediately alienated anybody under 40. But what's interesting to me, and the reason I bring him up, the first thing that I have clear memory, contextual memory of, is like, when they circled back during Nixon Frost, the interviews, right?
Yeah, right.
And the guy came off like Emperor fucking Palpatine. He was a clear deceiver. He was defensive. He was dark. His sweaty in his voice, right?
Yeah.
He seems like an angel and a man we'd be lucky to have compared to the guy in office now.
Yeah. That's what I kind of hate because now all of these people that I grew up just detesting and writing songs about, and they were now I have to say, I still hated I hate their politics, but they were fairly reasonable. They didn't seem completely insane. I mean, W seems like, I mean, he's a dumbass, but he still seems like more thoughtful. Like he actually thinks through shit,
Well, I got one for you. I think that cultural absurdity, it used to be that if something was absurd, it just couldn't be taken seriously. If it was absurd on the face of it, it used to be thrown out. That's how you have something like the death of the Howard Dean campaign. He yelled with a weird voice, and suddenly he was a non-politician.
Yeah, and ruined his political career.
compared to grab him by the pussy.
Yeah.
So absurdity is no longer a career killer.
Yeah.
And bizarreness. And so what I was going to ask you, though, I don't just want a Trump batch here, but I actually have this thing where I wonder, I was a huge Obama fan, but in the sense that I was a huge Clinton fan. And I know Bill Clinton was no angel. And probably not even really politically in sync with my true value system.
Right.
I've always been an admirer of political talent and fascinated by people who could work with a crowd, within music, within everything.
Right.
And those were both two people that were extremely politically talented, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me that wonders, can you get to that office? Can you get to that office in this country without being a scumbag on someone?
I've always thought you sort of have to be a bit of a scumbag just to want to do it, just because it speaks. Well, first of all, I mean, you have to have such a tremendous ego, and I by nature just hate that. Like the minute I sense that somebody's got a gigantic ego, I retreat, and I just can't stand it. But yeah, I don't know. I want to believe that the small bit of idealism that I still possess, I want to believe that there's somebody young that's coming up and that's going to do it. But I just feel like the system is so flawed and so fucked up that I don't see how you survive. I don't understand how you're going to take somebody's money, somebody's evil money at some point, and it just I don't see how you.
The Bernie model, which kind of jumped off of the Obama model, is interesting with the massive amount of small donors.
Yeah.
I'd be interested I know you were, at least momentarily in closer proximity to that operation than most of us, just by opening a couple rallies, I think it was.
Yeah.
Did you get the vibe there that massive ego wasn't a component, or that necessary scumbaggery we just mentioned was absolute?
Bernie's a freak. I mean, no, I don't. And that's the thing. Like I've voted for him 2 times and did a couple of rallies for him. And I think I would love for Bernie Sanders for him to be the president. But I'm also, I'm so far, I don't even know if I'm far left anymore. I used to think I was so far left that even my, fairly, mainstreaming, Democrat friends would always sort of laugh at me. Now I don't know what I am, because it's just, I don't know. This time that we're living through right now is really, this is the first time in probably 15, 20 years where I felt deep, dark hopelessness and depression. Like I have not felt like this. And so, yeah, like, I mean, I've been depressed.
I get that. And I can relate to that, but you never want to hear that about Kevin Seconds, man.
Right. Cause I'm so positive all the time.
I was going to say, I'm so lucky you didn't just say, fuck you right there. But anyway.
No, but like it's the first time where I just, I sometimes I have to, like, when I wake up, I have to think about, I'm waking up and I think to myself, like, am I sort of still pretending like I'm fighting the good fight at least? Am I still on the right side of the fence? Am I still, and that's mostly because of what's going on, and especially with social media, with shit like cancel culture, and we can talk about that if you want later. But just things that the younger generation now is embracing, and they're sort of dictating how this is going to go now, which I'm fine with. Like I know I'm an old guy that's just going to always be in the way.
It's also what we were.
Yeah, but I guess I mean, you're right.
We didn't have the mechanics available to us, and information didn't come as fast, and neither did course correction, because you step out of line in the social networking age, and people beat the toxicity right out of you.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing. We didn't have the social media stuff to deal with, so like call it culture to me. Like growing up, I was always taught never snitch. So the idea of doxing, even the most hardcore Nazi motherfucker, the idea of posting some dude's address and, calling his work. Never occurred to me because I just was always taught, like, don't tell, never tell on somebody. If you can't deal with yourself, which I'm not, I was never like an aggressive, violent guy, but if you can't deal with it yourself, just don't, put the word out and tell everybody else about it. And now that's what everybody does. That's how revolution is kind of, happening a little bit.
I have mixed feelings on it too.
Yeah. I'm not, I'm used to it now. I've talked to younger friends who, for a while I was mouthing off about it. I was just like, that's bullshit, man. Like fucking, that's just like snitching, but now I kind of know better because I know that it's going to be a debate that I don't really want to sit and have, or I don't want to spend that much time doing it. And I can't say that it's wrong. I mean, like with the Me Too movement, I think it's done a lot of good. There's stuff involved with it maybe that people don't agree with and think that people have gone overboard. But I think it was time. The guys were called out for
the world
shit
is the world is better for it. But there's no doubt it's a hot potato. Even,
for sure. Yeah.
A thing that I think about is dumb, stupid shit that was part of the first generation or two. I guess that'd be second generation, but of punk rock. Different shock tactics and everything else. Yeah. The context is completely lost on people who were born 30 years after.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And it's not that it should be absolutely forgiven. Maybe we shouldn't have been that young and dumb. But there were probably things scribbled on my notebooks in 1982.
Of course.
That would erase any ounce of credibility to anything social I have to say now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not that I'm justifying it, but I honestly believe there's place for context. And that's not, should Confederate statues come down? Fuck yes, they should. Should they be defended as heritage? Eat my shit. You and I have both been to Berlin. The Reichstag is still there, but every swastika has been blown off it with a bazooka.
Yeah, for sure.
But pretending, maybe on an individual level or within the sphere of the counterculture, pretending we used to be somebody we weren't, that's credit that's not earned, and that's disgrace that we weren't aware of. It was a level of education that we hadn't experienced.
Yeah, that's true. And it's that kind of what I said earlier, where I said sometimes I wake up and I have to double check myself and say, am I on the right side? Am I on the right side? That part of that is for years, and maybe you feel this way too, but for years I always kind of thought, I'm just a fucking loudmouth who's just trying to figure out a way to not be bummed out throughout life, because I grew up in a fairly sketchy, not terribly healthy, I didn't have a great childhood, and I watched anybody that I knew from that time just are dead or ended up going through prison or joined the military and coming out even more fucked up. So I always kind of think like, well, I'm on the right side of the fence politically. I've always been involved in supporting causes and doing benefits and everything. But now it's kind of like at all the times leading up to now, I thought, shit, I'm on the right side of the fence. Now I kind of go, shit, I don't know if I'm viewed as an ally. I don't know how important it is to be my age and have people view me as an ally. Maybe there really is a lane that I should be in, or a lane that we should be in.
There was a phrase that I used to think was a cop-out that I used to read as cheap to me, that I place higher stock in now, and that's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Say it again.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. In other words, how often does the right side of history decrease its number through being hypercritical? In other words, how often do we end up thinning our own herd in ways that we'll probably regret decades from now?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's going on a lot. Like even with this, this shit. If I let myself, I can easily fall into some stupid discussion with over Joe Biden, for instance. And I've been. And admittedly, I've been petty, like especially online, where I'll do the fucking hashtag blue, no matter who, and because I know it's going to get under the skin of certain people, and then I'm like, why am I doing this?
It's the cornerstone of my conversation with Russ Rankin. That's why we're going to go at it on here.
I can't wait for that. That'll be really good. Yeah, right. Because and actually, Russ and I have had this discussion, and it's always been respectful, but I just feel like at this point, we're so bad off, and the country so needs, and like for me to vote for Joe Biden, I mean, I was excited about to vote for Obama twice. I was excited
Right.
to vote for Clinton twice. There was a sense that people that were actually close to my age, or not just some old white dude that's 80 or whatever,
Hmm.
but we just need something. We need something quick, I think, for the
Right.
next for generations to come. And I don't have kids, so I don't really have to worry about it too much. It's like I'm not concerned for what the world's going to be like because I've got a kid that's going to but I do want better for young people,
Right.
and it's just I can't imagine. And maybe Biden, I'll tell you, I can't watch Biden talk for very long without starting to get that sort of like, oh dude, man, they really he does
Well,
speak his age. He
there's two
does seem.
things about Biden. Okay, somebody called me out on Facebook, which I think is the old people's venue anyway, apparently. But somebody called me out on Facebook and sent me all these well-researched arguments that he actually has a stammer. He actually has a clinical speech impediment, which I didn't know.
Yeah,
And it made me feel bad for kind of tearing him a new asshole over his delivery, right?
Yeah.
Um,
There's a YouTube. There's an ad for that it pops up on before so many videos. It's either the Trump, is Trump, the guy you're going to vote for is Biden. But he comes on and he goes, "Hey folks, I just want to," and I can't remember exactly what he says, but he just it's within the first line, and it gets on it fucking drives me nuts every single time. I have to quickly stop the ad because I'm like, you're just proving that you're too old to be doing this, and you're like all we have right now, But,
well, he had the moment where he was doing good, just speaking like a decent human about the pandemic on the national airways last week. And then when he took a Q&A, he made it crystal clear that he doesn't have an up-to-date enough perspective to grasp that Columbus is not a remembrance to be protected.
Yeah.
And that was a bummer for me because it was like, I go into this November knowing that I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. And that a lot of people don't agree with that. It's two things. It goes back to that whole, it's not easy to make Nixon look like a saint. And it's a world gone so far sideways that Mitt Romney will march with Black Lives Matter. Things are off the rails. We're not talking about getting a run-of-the-mill Republican out of the office. I am in close proximity and in affectionate space with registered Republicans.
Yeah.
We do not see eye to eye on that.
Yeah.
But I understand their background, their motivation, and they've allowed the ship to sail on Trump. We're not dealing with ousting a run-of-the-mill Republican. This is about not clearing the path to 4 more years with a madman, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is a man with no sense of borders, no sense of decorum.
No. I don't know what he's. He's insane. I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know how I don't know how a guy like that gets. I always thought there had to be some sort of vetting process. I always thought they've got to go through if it takes what it takes for me to just go get a job at driving for Lyft or Uber. You have to go through some crazy thing that takes weeks to get a job doing that. How is it that the president can just
Dude, they can have video of him eating baby harp seals with a plastic spoon, and it would just be, 4 years ago would have just driven his poll numbers. There was, he perfectly facilitated a backlash against 8 years of the first black president. I don't see any need to overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
For a huge demographic, it was like, okay, we're done with that shit.
Yeah.
There's more to it for some, and those are sort of the people I was describing a minute ago. So a little ways back, you started alluding to your mom and to your upbringing and things. So I want to kind of get into 7 seconds, and I'll share with you a conversation I had with a member of my own band yesterday when I told him I was going to be doing this. He said, you used to go to Fender's, which was one of the grisliest places on the West Coast, and different factions would be bashing different bands and different fandoms or whatever, and then you get to the point in the night that was 7 seconds set, and suddenly everybody was everybody's friend, and everybody was on each other's shoulders. Now, we both agree that's a little bit of a hyper-romanticism, but it was a fact. And you come into this even a few years before me when it was even more savage and more nihilistic, which makes it an even bolder move to have sort of come with the palm of your hand instead of the knuckles. Where do you think that came from?
I'm not really sure. I think it's just because back then we might have been, one of the earlier band, a band that claimed, I mean, we call ourselves a hardcore band, but that's because we were punk rockers, but we loved the fact that, like, I remember talking to Joey Shithead from DOA, and I was talking to him about the hardcore word and the term, and he had this whole, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but he had this whole philosophy, and I thought it was really cool, and I thought, yeah, that makes sense. But for me, it was always like, as much as I love bands like the Pistols and even Black Flag, bands that were fairly, dark and lyrically, and kind of nihilistic, whatever. I love those bands, but I felt like I was already I was trying to escape that world. Like I just wanted to get out of being a teenager, and I wanted to be an independent adult human, so I could try to fend for myself. I wasn't able to do that very well as a kid, and I my mom raised 3 kids by herself, and it just was, it just felt like if I don't do something right now, I always say that discovering punk rock was the perfect timing for me, because I really had nothing else. I couldn't figure out, I wasn't good in school. I wasn't good with girls. I wasn't good. I hadn't found anything. And all I could think of was I love music, but I loved, fucking Led Zeppelin and Aerosmith, and I was never going to be there,
Were you always kind of if it's broken, if you need something fixed, you fix it yourself type person?
I think I just learned to be like that because that's what my mom did, and at an early age, like I started working because I needed to help her with rent and stuff like that. So I did have a sense of like trying to make life better, whatever it meant. But I also grew up partially in Reno, Nevada, which at the time was just awful. It was an awful place for young people. Now it's fine. Reno's got a pretty happening, it's cultural up there, but growing up then it was like,
now Orange County is horrible. But anyway, now Orange County is horrible.
Well,
but it's always been Nixon and Reagan country.
Right.
Now,
but think about
on the sidewalks, and it's openly hateful.
Right. But think
when
about
I was a kid, the Metzgers and the Warskins and people like that.
Oh yeah.
They hid in the shadows. Yeah. No, that's a voting block.
Yeah.
In Orange County.
Which is why probably you guys had one of the best musically. You had one of the best scenes. Like some of the best music ever made was coming out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I just I think like what was the question again?
So you were talking about how bad Reno was at the time.
Oh, it was just, there was nothing there. It was wasteland. And I remember I turned 18, and I had 2 friends that getting ready to turn 18 or turning 18, and their goal was to join the Army, and they kept trying to get me to register. Like, let's all go in the Army. And I was like, man, I can't do it. I haven't even started living my life yet, and I just, I had a point, and then I lost it. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just, punk rock was, it was very negative, and as much as I loved it, I also didn't want to I didn't feel like I'd be good at adding to it. And I also was just trying to figure out a way to convince myself that I wasn't just a lot of my friends were into drugs, drinking. A lot of friends were just straight up, they were raised by shitty parents, and they were racist and treated girls like shit. And I never really I think I was too sensitive, I was a little too sensitive for my own good. And so I think that just, when I started to think I could write a song, I just wanted to make sure that I conveyed, as angry as I was, and as potentially, I mean, I used to fucking put my fist through walls, and what I mean? I was going through a lot of crazy shit. I just wanted to, start fixing myself at an early age. And that's the best I can put
Well,
it.
to your credit, and I know you've heard this a million times, but I would like to think you and I are capable enough of dialogue that you would take me seriously on this. Simple fact of the matter is, if you weren't like that, thousands of people's lives would be very, very different. So I thank you for it, whether or not you know how to do the genealogy on it or not.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
So that said, how long a run exactly was 7 Seconds actively?
We made it. We got to our 38 years. And then,
damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm almost more pissed.
My ex-wife is still not 38.
All right, this is over. No, I mean, yeah, at 38, and honestly, we could have. I mean, I'm not saying it would have been pretty, but we could have kept going because we were
Mhm.
we were still touring and we were still loving the shit out of it. You know, we were still going to
Mhm.
Europe. We'd gone to South America a few times. And even the U.S. stuff. All these friends of ours that are in bands that go over and headline, you know, fucking massive festivals and play in front of
Mhm.
thousands, who can't pack can't pack 300 kids in a club in America. You know, who've basically said, "Why are you guys still touring America?" And we're like, "We're still having it's going well. We're
That's a
doing okay."
reality that escapes a lot of people. That festival culture and
Yeah.
the heap 20 big ones in one giant field is not the same as being able to draw 10,000 by yourself.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but you're giving me a perfect in for something I wanted to ask you about. But okay, over the course of the 38 years, and in year 38, what year did you? I remember everybody remembers the day you guys broke up because the internet was suddenly just clogged with the 7 seconds logo. Um, but it was a very different animal by that year.
Yeah.
How strange was that? You know,
What
because
being in it?
I would come in and out musically and keep trying to break these new acts
Yeah.
into a room where the wall or the size of the door or whatever was increasingly higher, increasingly thick. You know, to ride
Yeah.
it straight through in the front row must be an odd perspective. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Well, yeah, yeah, you know, we get it was getting more and more people would come up to us, young people would come up to us and say, "Hey man, great set. I really enjoyed it." And I just to hear them say it, I'd say, you know, you're how old are you? They're 19, 20. I was like, "How the hell did you get turned on to us?" And every time they said it was their parents. They had parents that loved us and grew up with us. And
that's got to be
so
odd.
it's very odd. And to a certain extent, it's you know, there's times I let myself think like, this is just gross. Like we're just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we're doing people were showing up at the shows with every record we had just so they could sign it because it might be the last tour, which it could have easily been the last tour anytime. But yeah, you're in a different, now you're in a whole different thing, you know.
Last time
And
you and I played together, I didn't bug you for a copy of Leave a Light On, and now it exists only on Spotify for me. So they
yeah,
were right. They were right to get that goddamn record on it.
well, yeah, but you know how there's also the fucking eBay fucking
Right.
discogs. It's, you know, the people that they go out and buy 5 copies of everything because they really just want to try to make money. I don't even give a shit. That's fine too, but yeah, it was an odd place, and our whole thing is that my brother Steve and I and Troy especially, our whole thing was like, look, let's just do this as long as we like each other. I don't want to be in a fucking, I don't want to be miserable
So
in
the
a
news
band.
flash is you don't like each other anymore. Okay,
No, that's
I'm fucking.
I
Okay,
mean,
sorry.
we shouldn't like each other because we're all
Okay.
fucking different. But and I mean, we all drive each other crazy. Don't get me wrong, but there was just just being able to get on stage together and I'm sure people went and saw us and said, Jesus Christ, why don't these guys give it up? Look at them. They look like, you know, but I think overwhelmingly we weren't faking it. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
we were doing it for the money. We've all worked jobs the entire time
Mm-hmm.
we've been a band. So, and not, there's no problem with that. You know, I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather, but it reminds me of a Tim Yohannan conversation I had where he was upset because we were at the old Maxim Rock and Roll house, and he says, "So
Mm-hmm.
what do you plan on doing?" And I was like, just be in my band. He's like, "You're gonna try to make a living with your band?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he was just fucking, he was just
Sour.
pissed. Yeah, he was just like, "No, man, it's just not honest. You know, you always keep a job, and then that way, you know, you do this for the love of it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it is for the love of it." You know,
Tim was so incredibly dogmatic, and then at the same time, like by the time he bowed out, and I don't mean actually bowed out, but I mean when he was really passing Maxim off, he was basically in love with retro faux 60s garage rock and wasn't even covering hardcore in the magazine. I never
yeah,
understood that, but you know, we're
yeah,
all individuals. We all have our own path. I mean,
yeah,
I'm grateful to the guy for the role he played in my life, but not everybody I
absolutely.
interview is going to bring up Tim Yohannan.
No, no. Well, I remember when we first started meeting guys like Agnostic Front and Murphy's Law, and those
Mm-hmm.
guys on the East Coast, they all would ask me, "So what's this fucking Tim Yohannan guy? He seems like a dick, you know?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Nah, you just have to know Tim, you know." But every East Coast person was just like wanting to know what
Oh,
his deal
I
was.
remember. The Clear Divide was agnostic front or Maximum Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, Tim would,
you did not mix your chocolate with your peanut butter back then.
he called me long distance. We were on tour and I guess it was 84 and we were playing a show that's the flyer itself is legendary because it's just it was us, Agnostic Front, Murphy's Law, and it's
The
the
big
flyers
soup of skinheads down at the bottom.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
just it's a circle of skinheads. We ended up not doing the show because we missed we had a matinee we had a show in Boston the night before and we had the matinee show and we were still pups. We had no idea like you're not supposed to sit around and wait till the very last minute to get on the freeway and get to the next city. But yeah, Tim called me, the friends that we were staying with in Boston. He's like, are you really playing with Agnostic Front? They're white power, right? And I'm like, no, man, we've talked it out. We've talked with them and stuff. We've been writing letters. And he's like, no, they're the white national band. And it was like, it was just he was pissed because they had the American flag, the backdrop,
I remember that's all right. All that 83, 84, 85 controversy is right in my ripe years. That's 85, I think, was the first time you and I met. And,
wow.
Truthfully, the conversations have been more real as adults. I know you have 8 million people that you have sort of this level of loose connection with in the world.
Yeah.
But it's funny because that's an era that people who were there still remember it with remarkable specificity.
Yeah.
The early and mid 80s, definitely.
For sure.
So in talking about 7 Seconds, and talking about the festival, talking about festival reality, talking about the way the animal had changed and everything else, I perceive you guys by the time you wrapped up as, and I don't know which specifically ones you were playing, but more or less capable of the Grossrock, Eperfest, punk rock bowling circuit, at whatever level and whatever size type, one's band is lucky to fall into. What I noticed, and we did a satellite non-sanctioned show during punk rock bowling a few years back. It's a different size animal and it's a different level of attention. I don't know if I'd say a community, but I didn't grow up in a punk rock that could take over whole towns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then to just stop and go back to you and your guitar, there had to be some culture shock.
Oh yeah, for sure. But the other thing is that I had started doing that solos thing so long before I started doing it on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was playing open mics and
right.
when I first moved to Sacramento, and I was kind of getting more involved in the singer-songwriter stuff. But yeah, I always liked that I had both. Like
Mm-hmm.
I go and play at somebody's fucking basement for 15 people with acoustic guitar and they pass around the hat. And then, we're playing Grossrock and there's, 15,000 people.
I was with a group of drunk Germans who stumbled away from my fest to see you play in some basement club in Berlin. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, every one of us in the room felt sancted,
That was
being at that one, not being at the Cortex stage. But
where you guys are playing
later.
Where you guys are playing. I remember because I went and saw you guys.
Mm-hmm.
We walked over there,
mm-hmm.
and I remember standing behind you guys on that
mm-hmm.
stage and just seeing for miles. You couldn't see anything but people, and I was just going, "Holy shit!"
I'm not convinced that everybody who gets to play those things realizes that's not about them.
Right? Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That band couldn't have filled a motorhome, and here we are in front of 10,000 people.
But you guys were fucking killing it, and the kids were going nuts, and it was like I remember just going like I remember my friend Alex who was driving me around. I was just like, this is fucking. I don't know if these guys would ever get the chance to do this kind of shit over in the States.
Absolutely, under no circumstances, fucking not.
Right, but nobody would. Who would except for fucking Rise Against or somebody. But yeah, I mean, that was so impressive. And I was so pumped when I had to go back and play that little dark club and do my acoustic thing. And when you guys all showed up, that was hilarious. That
was the bitter part of that night. Really simplistic question, but I noticed I had it on my notes. They're two very different animals, like we just said. Do you prefer one over the other?
I love getting up with the microphone and doing this shit. I love it. I miss it. I hate that I'm old enough and out of shape enough now to where I can't move the way I used to be able to. I mean, I can, but I'm going to always hurt myself. In the last 2 years of 7 Seconds, on stage twice, I won a big festival in Quebec. I tore my calf muscle, my left calf muscle.
Yeah.
Second song into it, and then like a few months later, we played the Roxy. It was the last time we played an LA show, and fucking torn meniscus, you know. And it's just from moving stupidly on stage, you know.
So with me, it's always my back, but I get it.
Yeah, well, right now I've spent a week with this crazy fucking pain I've got in my shoulder and my back, and it just, you know, I keep saying to my wife, it's like, if I was like, I remember when I used to do, you know, I'd get a pain when I was in my 20s, even 30s, and I'd just shake it off, and the next day I'd be fine, you know. You just can't do that shit. But it's also like there's something about when I travel for the solo stuff, I travel alone mostly, unless I'm out with like Steve Soto or Kepi Dooley, you know, and we're usually sharing. They're in my van. But there's something about just driving by myself, stopping what I want. I like being early. I hate being late for shows. 7 Seconds was notoriously like fucking around to the various, you know, leaving the hotel. Oh my God. It was just unbearable. Like I'd be if I wasn't driving, I'd be in one of the bench seats just going, fuck this. I can't, no more. This is it, you know?
Right.
So, but yeah, there's something to be, the last few years of our band life, we were playing in front of more people and making way more money than we ever imagined making. Like the offers that we'd get to go play, you know, Brazil or fucking whatever.
Right.
And so there's that element, and there's just the fact that it's nice to kind of to know that if you're you know, your name's on a flyer and it's on the fucking marquee or whatever, people are actually going to come out and make an effort. Whereas like with the solo stuff, people are like, yeah, I've seen him do his thing. It's not, you know, he doesn't play 7 Second stuff. He doesn't, you know, and I get it. I get all of it. But I, you know, like the thing is I never wanted to play 7 Second song on acoustic guitar. It doesn't make sense to me, you know?
Right.
And the few times I've done it, and because somebody asked me to play Trust, I do it. And I can just tell that we're both thinking the same thing, which is like, yeah, this isn't a good idea at all. This
what
is
the fuck have I done? So here's something that's occurring to me. And I'm glad, you know, you and I did this as my first episode. I thank you for that. It's very comfortable for me, right? I had told myself I was going to keep these to a half hour, so I think we've probably shredded that.
Yeah.
Or not, who knows? My sense of time could be off, but I realize you and I could enjoy probably talking for another 45 minutes to an hour.
I'm sure,
So in the event that I keep doing this, could I get a commitment out of you to do another one sometime?
Of course, yeah. I always. I mean, we don't get to talk enough, and I always enjoy hanging out. And
right.
You know, you're one of the people from our little community world that I have a great deal of respect. I have a lot of respect for a lot of people, but I really
don't take it back. Don't take it away from me.
but I trust where you're going with things, and you know, I like the way you put your thoughts into words, especially on social media. I think
Thank you.
It's important, and it does inspire me. It makes me want to be less of not that you're like Mr. Rah positive guy, but it actually cheers me up. And I know you're not trying to cheer anybody up necessarily.
Well, there's an interesting thing. If I post something after about 11 p.m. at night, it's usually mean as a snake and doesn't survive till morning because my conscience gets the better of me. You know? So I'm no online saint, but I genuinely appreciate that. It comes from a source that I respect. I'm going to kill the record in just a second. If you want to call me or anything, you know, with any questions about this, that'd be great. But that is episode 1 of Dano Says So with the perfect person to do it. So thank you, Kevin.
Of course. Thank you, man.
All right. I'm going to hit that button.